Hello, you are downtown with Robbie Haig. Thank you for being here. And today I am talking with Conni DiLego, who is a former executive director of the Council on Aging, or the Center for Active Living in Plymouth, and is now interim director. And Conni, first off, I would like to welcome you to the show, but also thank you for stepping up to the plate as interim.
Thank you, Robbie. It's my pleasure, believe me. I'm happy to be back in the seat, especially knowing it's temporary.
Yes, yes. But temporary can be a long time.
Well, it is already long. It's in a couple of months.
But it's always good to see you, and
Thank
you for being here.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Today we're going to be talking about a very unique topic, I think, grandparents raising grandchildren.
Yes, indeed. This is a subject very, very dear to my heart, as you well know.
Right.
And as you have witnessed yourself before, as you said, you've attended a couple of the support meetings. There are a lot of grandparents raising grandchildren. The numbers are just growing exponentially every day. And it's a very, very sad thing, and it's a subject that isn't tackled very often, and I appreciate having the opportunity to speak about this because it's something we need to bring awareness to the community of. There are so many obstacles and hoops that these poor people have to go through. And
it's not what grandparents expect to do.
No, and that's one of the biggest things. When this happens, you go from being grandma, baking cookies in the kitchen or whatever,
right,
taking the kids to the park, to being mom.
Yeah.
And you're mom to this child that you just got, but you're also mom to a child that has either died or is on the streets or is suffering from opioid addiction.
Wow.
Or is in jail, incarcerated, or there are cases where they're deployed. But
wow,
you all of a sudden are no longer, you don't have the luxury of being a grandma and a grandpa anymore. You're in a different role. And that's really unsettling, to say the least.
Right.
It's a little schizophrenic. I mean, what do you do? How do you treat the
Sure.
child and the grandchild? You know, and you still want a kid to have the love of a grandparent.
Of course.
As such, you know.
And of course, in the other type of grandparents, what you generally hear is, oh, it's so good to love them, and then go on home and leave them with their parents.
Yeah, well, try being 75 years old and having an 8-month-old baby.
Oh my.
You know, or a brand new baby, or a teenager.
Wow.
It's
So they come in all ages.
all ages. And Robbie, this situation, our culture is so different than it was when you and I grew up. They don't just go outside and play anymore. You know, come on in when the street lights go on, or as soon as I call you for supper. It's not like that anymore. It's it's a scary environment that's out there. I feel it's tough. It's tough for the kids. It's tough for the grandparents.
And you say, come in when I call you for supper. Are there instances where they don't even know if they're going to get a supper?
Oh, yeah. And that's what Grandpa and Grandma are trying to avoid. This brings up huge court issues, legal issues that happen. And it's a case like, if you see what's going on in the family, you know, your own child's, your birth, and the birth parents of the grandchild, and you know that it's not right, or you know that there's something amiss, and you try to do something about it, it doesn't always work. And sometimes you really have to intervene with legal assistance or police or whatever else, and of course that causes all kinds of rifts either. But sometimes you have to do it in order to save that child's life. That's really the only reason they're doing it. It's to keep the child out of foster care and keep the child in a family and keep the child with somebody who loves them and knows them.
Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, as you're saying this, that not only does the grandparent have difficulties with the biological parents by intervening,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you have grandchildren who are very upset also
Sure.
that the parents
They don't understand. They don't understand. And as you well know, sociologically speaking, a child will love its parents regardless.
Absolutely.
Regardless that, you know, they've been abused physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually, you know, traumatized. Every single kid that comes into this situation has been traumatized. You have to know that.
Yeah.
And how do you deal with that? We have kids that have come in and I have one particular case, a grandmother raising twins. She got the twins when they were, I think they were 3. There were 3 children. There were the twins and a younger child. The younger child was so disabled, let's say with trauma, that they were not able to keep her, unfortunately.
Wow.
So Grandma's raising the twins, and she's done a wonderful job. They've had church upbringing, which I'm not saying everybody has to do that. I'm just saying this was her choice to keep them. They're very intelligent kids and stuff, and now they're in their teenage years.
Wow.
It's not so good. All of the stuff that they went through is coming up. Things are coming out of them that she never knew. That was never, I mean, they've had counseling and everything, but these things come back later in life. Wow. I mean, and she's having a hard time dealing with that.
Wow.
But trying to keep the son, the boy, from getting into drugs like his mother and father were. So it's a number of situations that come up. And I have to tell you that we have an ongoing group of upwards of 60 people that are in our support group. They're not always there every week, but I'm saying on our list we have about 60 people. Our average weekly meeting is around 10 to 12 grandparents.
Wow.
And of those grandparents, I would honestly tell you that at least, I'll say 92% of them are there because of opioid addiction. Because their kids are, like I said, they're either dead, they're either on the streets, they're incarcerated, or they're not able to manage their children. They're just not able to do it.
How very sad.
It is extremely sad.
And if I do remember correct, let me ask you this about these. It's a different world of grandparents too.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these grandparents still working.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
So
sure.
that's got to be a tough thing.
It is a very tough thing because let me list some of the articles, some of the things that are going on.
I know.
If they're working,
they're going around in my mind, and it's difficult to separate.
And
one
how
from
do
the
you
other.
go? Now you're working, and you've been working for a long time. You're maybe in your 60s. Let's say you're in your 60s or 70s, whatever.
Yeah.
You have to come up with childcare. If you have a child you're taking care of a child that's going to school, and you can see them off at school before you go to work or make a lunch and things like that, that's one thing. But you have an infant or a baby, it's no less care than if you're the birth mother of that child.
Right.
And you have a work, you have your responsibilities at work. Some people have to quit.
Wow.
If the family is, I should say, fortunate enough to have grandpa and grandma or 2 partners, at least one might opt to stay home and take care of the child, and that the other one continue to work. You need funds.
Yeah.
You got to raise this child. Let's say you have a kid that comes in as a baby or even a preteen, whatever. Yeah, this is for life.
Right.
You've got that child till 18, and then you got college.
Yeah.
That they're all thinking about. People are exhausting their incomes. They're spending their 401s. They're spending their whole retirements are going off on this.
And now talk to me about that. Why are they spending their retirement?
Because they don't have any help.
Okay.
Plain and simple. They do not have financial help. Okay, I'll
And
qualify
they're
that.
responsible. If they take on this child,
Yep.
the grandparent is responsible for the child.
Yes, and let me clarify that because I
Okay.
say there is no help. There is,
Yeah.
to some extent. There is DCF, the Department of
Okay.
Children and Families, or DSF, whatever it's called now, whatever initials it's going by. But most families prefer not to use their services. If you do use their services, yes, you can get some help depending on the situations and your income and so on and so forth. But then they are the overlords of your family. All right, and I don't want to cast aspersions on any particular organization, so forgive me if that's what it sounds like, but we haven't always had the best.
We're dealing with reality
Yeah.
here.
We haven't had the best of luck. With all of the grandparents we've had, I can really name 2 that were thrilled with the assistance and the help that they got with DCF. They happen to get good social workers.
Yeah.
DCF is overburdened. I understand that,
Yeah.
but we are too. The grandparents are too.
Right.
So they opt to do it on their own, or excuse me, DCF might kind of urge them to adopt. Once you're adopted, everything's cut. You're on your own completely. There's nothing else left of that. Legal guardianship is the best way to go if you're if you do stay with DCF, because you might get some food and clothing allowance and things like that, child care, mass health. They do have some things for you, but it's not the most pleasant way to go.
Yeah.
Now, the grandparent that opts to keep the child and raise them themselves with their own financial, they can usually get them on mass health at least to have with the insurance thing. And if they're lucky and savvy and they learn how to play the ropes, then they might be able to get child care or some help now and then. But for the most part, they're on their own. And Robbie, I've had my next door neighbor when I was living in Plymouth at the mobile home park. My neighbor took custody of her 18-month-old granddaughter, great-granddaughter.
Wow.
Great-granddaughter. Grandma was 76.
Wow.
Grandma had a dislocated shoulder, cancer, all kinds of things, but she was not going to let that child go to foster care over her dead body, which nearly happened. Yeah. She lived in a mobile home park. It's an over 55 community.
Oh dear.
No children allowed. Within a month, she was receiving notices from the management that she would have to leave. That either the child goes or she goes. It's a real problem, and you can understand it's a 55 community, so if you move into that and they say no kids, okay, you expect you're going to live there with no kids, so you don't want little ones running around. But you're 78 years old, you've been living here all your life, what are you going to do?
Wow.
She managed to, I believe she managed for about a year and a half with the little girl, adorable little child. And then her own granddaughter adopted the child. So she stayed in the family. But the trauma that poor woman went through, and the pain, literal pain, because she was so sick. Mm-hmm. But those are the kind of things that grandparents will do just to keep that child from going into foster care.
Wow.
Because foster care isn't as good as it sounds. I mean, we need it, but believe me, it needs a lot of overhauling. And, But it's blood. Yeah. I would do the same thing. I would give my life to have my grandchild with me.
Of course. So have the numbers been rising?
Yeah, they have exponentially. And it's all with the opioid. It's all with the drug crisis. I think I said that in our group, at least 92% of them are all there because their child is a victim or is an addict, and they are the victims. Yeah. But the numbers are rising all across the country. Here in Massachusetts, it's particularly high. I think that's pretty well known. That the drug problem is out of control here, but so therefore the grandparent raising grandchildren is. And they don't say anything. You know, a lot of grandparents refuse to talk about it or don't bring it out in the open for a lot of reasons. First of all, there's the shame. Oh my God, my own daughter is a drug addict. Oh, horrible, you know. Then there's the guilt. I didn't do well. I didn't raise my child. It's my fault. Mea culpa, mea maxima culpa, right? And so that they're isolated now. A couple that was always outgoing and they played golf and they went out on trips with their friends and everything else, their friends aren't doing that. No. They don't have a grandchild. They don't have somebody keeping them from traveling and going away. Right. So now they're on their own. It's awful. Yeah. You know, the things that they have to go through. So that a lot of times they won't come forward. Even with our group, now we started this group in 2006. And we've had brochures. We've published thousands of brochures. We've done TV and radio spots on it. We've been in the newspaper. We keep trying to get the word out that we're there to help, and it's still slow. People are very reluctant to come in, and we've been trying all these years to figure out why are they so reluctant to come in, and that's part of the reason. They don't want to admit it, and they feel the shame and the guilt, and they don't. That's what we have the support group for. Let you know, no. We're in this and it's not your fault, and we have help, and we can give you assistance, if not financial, just the support of us being there and you knowing there's somebody else in your exact position or maybe worse is so helpful. So that's why we try to really spread the word on grandparents raising grandchildren. Yeah. And you know, go ahead.
And the grandparents too, they're used to handling life on their own. You know, they'll take care of it, and and now they're doing something that they can't even get a break from.
Right. Exactly.
It's
there's no
very
break.
Sad.
There's no break.
There's no break.
Because once you say I'm going to do this, you're in.
You got it. Yeah. Now, do you deal with legislators about?
We do, and we're very lucky in Plymouth, I have to say that. Representative Matt Moratori and Senator Vinnie DiMacedo and former Tom Coulter were and Senator Murray, very, very helpful, especially when we got this going, to bring awareness to the state about this situation. We've been trying to affect laws and changing laws. We did a little, we have gotten somewhere. I'm very proud to say that part of our group is responsible for the establishment of the commission. There's a commission set up, the Commission on the Status of Grandparents Raising Grandchildren, these long titles.
Oh, yes.
But basically it's to look into it and see what we can do. And Senator Murray was very, moved that along very well when she was in, I'm not saying the right words, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
Instrumental in getting that going.
Yes.
And I was on that.
But she's a very caring person.
Oh, she is.
They're all very caring.
And she knew about the situation. She'd actually been to the center. She'd met some of the grandparents. They all have. So this isn't just word of mouth. They actually witnessed and heard and listened to some of this. And of course, sometimes the grandparents have to go to their office to see extra help or whatever. But so we got the commission going, and it's still in effect. I was on that for about four and a half years myself. And they're doing good work. It's a tough hole. They're not financed. They did finally get a grant a couple of years ago, and to provide them with someone to sort of be the director, secretary, director, excuse me, not director as such, secretary, administration, keep it going and get the word out and stuff. And they're going across the state with listening tours, trying to find out what's going on where. They hold an annual conference, and there's, for the people watching, if they're interested, there is a website. Just go into grandparentsraisinggrandchildren.org or .gov. Okay. Actually, if you just type in grandparents raising grandchildren, you'll come up with several websites. AARP has a good website. The state has a good website. There's something called Generations United, but those will all come up when you tap in grandparents raising grandchildren. And while I'm at it, I would suggest anybody that wants to come to Plymouth, we're open. It's not just Plymouth. We have people from Marshfield, we have people from Onset and Wareham, Plymouth, Carver. We're there, and we'll welcome anybody in there. So that's at the Center for Active Living, 44 Nook Road in Plymouth, and the number is 508-830-4230. Ask anyone to call there and ask for Connie or Beth. When I'm not there, Beth can guide them to that. But the support group meets every single Thursday at 10 o'clock and has done so for years. Wow. It's now from 10 to about 12:30 every Thursday. And then we will be having the evening meetings again. We hope to start those up pretty soon. What we do is once a month we will have a little dinner. It's a family. The grandparents bring in the kids and the husbands or wives or whoever, you know. We have grandfathers too. So they're all invited, and we have pizza, we have salad, we have a little supper, and then the children go off with a caregiver, and we stay and we have a meeting with a speaker to talk about some of the issues that are going on. Yeah. I got off the track. You were asking about legislation. There's a big one that we're working on right now, and Representative Moratori is behind this one too, helped. We wanted it to, okay, I'll back up a little bit. When a grandparent is called at 2 o'clock in the morning, come get this baby, come get this child, or they're going to foster care. Boom, you're out the door and there you go, right? Yeah. So now you get home and it's in the morning, and now what do you do? What do you do?
I can't even imagine.
You know, what? So, okay, there's got to be some legal thing I have to do. So I go to court and I try to find out, now what? First of all, there's very little information out there for grandparents. The Plymouth court has now an advocate that can help you through that with a little bit of advice. This is kind of new in there. It's very successful. But all right, so you go into court, and when you're facing the judge, you have the child. The child has legal representation from the state. The parents, the birth parents, have legal representation from the state.
Oh, so the birth parents would be there also?
Mm-hmm. If they're there. If they're not, at some point they are, but
okay.
If they show up, that's a problem too. They don't always show up. Yeah. But mom and dad, grandpa and grandma, they're paying out of their pocket. And like you said, Robbie, the parents don't always show up. So grandma has hired a lawyer to meet her at the courthouse so that they can get this over with. Birth parent doesn't show up. Grandma, they're still out that $2,000, whatever it was they had to pay the lawyer, and this goes on and on and on, bleeding them. Wow. They're exhausting their 401ks, they're exhausting their retirement. Some of them are just living on Social Security. Some of the single grandmas that they're about. So what we're trying to do.
You're exhausting me just trying to process.
But it's true.
There's just so much that can and does happen.
So what we're trying to do with the reps is to get a law put in place. They did come up with a bill to effectively give the same kind of representation to the grandparents.
Okay.
All right? Mm-hmm. Well, that's been it's been there for a while. Wow. We've called, all the grandparents call, we write letters, we do whatever we can. We're very proactive with that, especially this group. And what they did is, they didn't file it, they amended it.
Okay.
And they amended it to the point that, okay, grandpa and grandma can get legal assistance from the state if there's a contentious battle over custody. Only if there's a contentious. There's not always a contentious, sometimes it's very clear. But sometimes you'll have, after a month or two goes by, and the birth family will come in, mom and dad, or mom or dad. I've been sober, I'm feeling good, I've gone to meetings, I've been hospitalized, here I am, you can take blood tests, I'm clear, I'm clean. I'm ready to take my baby back.
Wow.
So sometimes they do. They show evidence that they've been clean. They're looking for a job, or they may have a job. So they get the child back. Sometimes they get assistance to get a living quarters, apartment or whatever else, and a job. And within a month or two, they're back out.
Wow.
And the cycle starts all over again. And when that happens, that's often when this contentious battle happens in the court. Because grandpa and grandma know that this isn't working, and they didn't want the child to go until, give me a year, give me 2 years. And we have had some grandparents that put up strict stipulations. We will forego care of the child once you accomplish this. And it sometimes takes a year or two to do that, but they're willing to hold on for that length of time just to see that their own child gets the help they need and gets into recovery completely. Which is there any recovery?
And what does this do to the grandchild?
There you go. All this time.
It's just a back and forth.
And how do they don't know. All they know is that's my mom, that's my dad, I love them.
Yeah.
And why is grandma doing this? Or please grandma, I don't want to go back. We get that too, depending on what the abuse was.
Yeah.
And if something that had sexual abuse, let's say, and if it hasn't been clearly determined, it usually comes out, but not right away. But then if you don't know that and you have a child that's refusing to go back to mom and dad, then you have to look into that.
Yeah.
So it's a...
Life is not simple, is it?
No, it's not. And here these wonderful souls worked their lives, raised their kids, did all their duty, paid their taxes, lived the life, and now they want to retire and do some traveling and hang out with their friends and read a book or whatever.
Yeah.
Read a book.
Read a book.
Read a book. Quietly sit in the corner and read a book.
Yeah, but even as you say, they use their own money, and probably down to the last penny, for these grandchildren.
Absolutely.
So even if they had the time, where can they go? What can they do?
Right.
It's just... And another question I have for you, I'm thinking that this is just not people of low income this happens with.
No, and that's a misnomer too. People used to think it was a lower culture, lower echelon financially and stuff, and that's just not the case. It's oblivious to culture, to finance, to anything. Actual reports show that, we have had, the country has risen a little bit economically. And so Black, Native American, other cultures that were generally looked at, I hope I'm not saying anything wrong, but generally looking at lower income, have been able to get out of that. And actually, if the statistics will show that they are less likely to have this issue than some of the white communities. All right, because they've come out of the poverty level, so they're more.
Anyone who listens to the news knows.
And we have people in our group. We have lawyers. We have retired executives. These are taking care of their grandkids.
Amazing.
And their own children are wealthy. I mean, they're well-educated college students.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no division. It's not this or the other thing. That's the word I'm looking for.
Isn't that amazing? And of course, what should be happening here, in the best of situations, is just having a grandparent who can step in and care for the grandchild. But it's not as simple as that.
No, it isn't. And think about when we talk about this, and God bless and praise the grandparents that are doing this. There's not enough blessing and praising for them, believe me.
Right.
But think of the poor kids that don't have grandparents.
Yes.
You know, that brings that even more to light. I mean, it makes us painfully much more aware of the foster care system.
Yes.
And the kids that, I mean, not all foster parents are I'm not casting aspersions on foster parents either, because we need them and God bless them,
Yeah.
the good ones.
Yeah.
But there are those, unfortunately, with the wrong intentions.
Yes.
But even with a good intention, a child raised by a foster parent is not raised by family.
Correct.
You're missing that essence of their blood,
Right.
you know, and they can
Absolutely.
have a wonderful life, they can be happy and everything else, but it's not their parents,
Yeah.
you know, or their grandparents.
And of course, now with this generational system going on, the kids are out there trying to find their parents.
Birth parents, yeah.
Birth parents. I mean, that's an indicator itself of how very important family is to them.
It is. And they also, they don't have their sisters and brothers if there was kin.
Right.
They don't have, and a lot of times you may have, this happens too, in a family with grandpa and grandma, their own children. Let's say they have 2 or 3 other kids, just besides the one that's in trouble. Sometimes those kids kind of stay away.
Sure.
They lose contact with mom and dad. They might be angry, they might be turned off, whatever the situation
And they
is.
might just not want to have 2 or 3 other children that they have to take care of.
Right. If I go visit
Yeah.
mom, I might have to take the kid for a week or so.
Guilt.
They don't step in all the time and say, "Do you need a break?
Right.
Can I help you?"
Right.
That's the worst of this, Robbie. There's not a lot
Yeah.
of people out there that recognize what's going on and say, "May I help you?"
And
You know?
grandparents who do this voluntarily should be helped by the system. They should be greatly helped
Oh
by
my
the
God,
system.
that's another big issue of mine. We're trying to figure out, I've got somebody working on it to figure out the numbers. It's in the millions and millions of dollars. If a child goes through foster care, they estimate, I forget, $208,000 to raise it through its life or something like that. And if we have 30, let's say 33, I think it's 33,700 or something, I don't have the numbers with me, kids that are being raised by grandparents. If you multiply that times 200,000,
Wow.
what is that? What are they saving the state?
They should be giving.
And the state doesn't want to step in and say, "Let us help you."
Wow.
That's not acceptable. It's not acceptable.
No, it is
You know,
not.
so we're fighting for that.
Yeah.
We're
And the
working.
whole ball of wax has to be examined.
It does.
You know, it's
Yeah.
just not an instance here and an instance there.
Right.
And I think it was our wonderful President Lincoln, I do believe, who said, "We shall be judged by the way we take care of older America and our children."
Yeah. And you know, and speaking of presidents, Obama was raised by his grandmother.
Interesting.
So was Governor Deval Patrick was raised by his
Really?
grandmother.
Very interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I want to write to Obama. You know, we need some help down here. But I know they're aware of the situation. There's so many situations. I know there's so many fires everybody has to put out. But we can't leave this one. We cannot leave this unaddressed. We can't. It's way too vital for our country, if I want to go so far as to say that.
It is
because we're
vital.
raising these kids, and if those kids don't have a decent background, if they don't have gentle, caring, growing up, this opioid epidemic isn't going to go away.
And then these thousands of children who are being raised by their grandparents are probably going to grow up and have similar situations.
The cycle will continue.
The cycle does continue.
Yep.
Wow.
Unless you can get to the root of it. Well, we're at the root of it.
Yeah.
Right now,
Yeah.
And I know that the state, I know the whole country is working on the opioid thing.
Right.
All we can do is pray with that. It's
Right.
just, there isn't anybody I know that doesn't have some family member or close friend that's addicted, or that is dead, or that, is on the street.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it certainly is a great deal to assimilate.
It is.
It's so not out there because
Right.
there are not enough people who know that grandparents do take care of grandchildren.
And I would say to that, and because that is exactly true, that if you have friends that are raising their grandkids, they're not necessarily babysitting,
Right.
and you know that,
Yeah.
support them.
Yeah.
Visit them, help them, give them a reprieve. Say,
Give
hey, you want to
them
go get your hair done?
Give them an hour.
you want to go shopping by yourself?
Excellent.
Yeah. They
Very
need
good.
just some kindness.
Yes. Yep.
It's so lacking. It makes me choke up because I can remember an incident with this one particular woman who was really overburdened and really having a tough time with the babies. And she came in and I just put my arms around her and hugged her really, really tight, and she broke down in tears, which of course I did too, but she said, it's been so long since anybody hugged me.
Wow.
Just a hug.
Just a hug.
Saying, I care.
Yeah.
You're important. Your life is valuable. What you're doing is awesome.
Well, I would like to thank you, Conni DiLego, for coming here and talking about this very, very important topic. And I hope legislation, awareness,
Awareness
you
is the
people
key.
out there who are watching, it's just a matter of getting the information out to the public. And
Spread the word.
Spread the word.
And I want to thank you for asking me in, Robbie, because
It's my
as you can
pleasure.
tell, this is a deep emotional situation that's dear to
Absolutely.
my heart, but needs to be out there.
Yes.
And so any opportunity we can get the word out, I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you.
That is wonderful. And to you out there, if you have an hour, I should say, make an hour to help a friend, a grandmother, somebody, even the child. The child would probably be very happy to see somebody else.
Or if you are a grandparent in this situation, there's help.
Yes.
And there's
Very
good help. There's help in
good.
Sandwich. There's help in Barnstable.
Yes.
There's a couple of there's a
Excellent.
very, very good grandparent support group in Barnstable.
Excellent.
So I would
Very good.
suggest please looking into it. There's help.
Very
You don't
good.
have to do it completely alone.
And I want to thank you for being part of the show, for coming downtown with Robbie Haig, and I hope to see you again real soon.